Well, there's finally good news coming in as we're winding down this year. The UK medicine regulator has approved the Oxford University AstraZeneca vaccine for emergency use. Here's a word from Serum Institute Cyrus Poonawalla on this.
We have been very much in touch with the Drug Control of India and the other powers that be, and they've assured us that they will maybe by the end of this week or next week for sure license us on the basis of the approvals that our collaborators in England, that's AstraZeneca and Oxford, have already been accorded today. So I don't think the licensing of the vaccine made by Serum Institute of India should be far away, maybe a few days from today.
Okay, in fact, we'll get our colleague Timsi to join in on the story in some time from now as well. She's tracking what the next steps are from the Indian government side, and there could be an important meeting today. We'll get to that in a moment. By the way, so, Wockhardt, for instance, which is going to be supplying this vaccine, packaging it in the UK, that stock's up and about. Prakash, now I don't know if this is a trade that you'd be interested in for the short to medium term or anything else, logistics. Is there any way that you would play the vaccine trade?
Surbhi, it's actually quite a black box because we've never seen this happen before. So you really don't have any empirical evidence to go by. But logically speaking, I think every cold chain in the country will have to be put to use once the rollout happens. The question is whether we are going to be in the spot very soon because there's so many ifs and buts. But according to what inputs I could get when Ekta and Archana were talking to Mr. Poonawalla earlier in the day, that there is a possibility, and the government hasn't really kick-started that, but there's a possibility that they would start producing for some of the other companies, and then probably the government gets into that. So you will get time to react. My way of playing this would obviously be, I'm not looking at logistics in such a big way yet, but there's a small company called Linde India. Unfortunately, it is not the company that actually, the parent company that manufactures oxygen and liquid nitrogen that people get mixed up. This is a EPC business of the same group, but they're setting up some very unique and very scaled up, expanded projects to back some of these logistic support activities and themes. So I would look at something which is a very sure shot beneficiary of this, irrespective of how it kind of gets executed. So because it's a little bit of a low float kind of a stock, it takes time for people to kind of commit more allocation to it. But I think it's a wonderful business if I were to play that theme.
Okay, Prakash, we will leave it there today. Thanks a lot for joining us, and here's wishing you Happy New Year 2021, and of course we'll talk to you in 2021 now. Thanks a lot.
Thanks Anuj. Same to you.
For joining us. Well, let's now move on. N. Jaikumar, Managing Director of Prime Securities, is joining us. Jakes, good afternoon. Thanks for joining us. Ideally, I would have wanted this conversation tomorrow, but tomorrow being expiry, to prepone this to today. Happy 60th birthday in advance, Jakes. I believe you're also completing 35 years in this industry. Two nice momentous occasions. Tell us, we talk about the markets every time, the daily moves and the monthly moves. Tell us, what's been your key learning over the last 35 years?
Well, thank you very much for the wishes and everything else. Indeed, 60 is another marker in that sense. And 35 years in the industry as well. 85 is when I joined Citibank. And it seems like not that far back in time, and I remember when we first joined, the investment bank was just being set up in the bank, and we were one of the first, we were the first recruits in that in the investment bank. It was earlier the Treasury, which became the Citicorp Investment Bank, and I spent 7 years. So if that was exciting, and we've been seeing the market since then. And I remember the first sucker trade, where we sort of all read some development in GlaxoSmithKline in 1985. We went and bought the shares, and we were down 10% in 3 days. And then somebody was explaining to me that this actually is, people wait for bakras like you, to buy the news and read so that they can exit. So that was the first sort of trade that I remember losing on a multinational, which not too many people have done, I'm sure, in their living memories. So from those days of early stage. Even the equity markets were in their infancy in that sense. The likes of Rakesh and others had probably just about entered the markets then. So from then to now, we've seen developments. And I think one of the most gratifying developments is something that has not been talked about, but in fact has been rubbished to an extent, has been the birth of these Robin Hood kind of traders, as people call them, the day traders. And the way I see it is that I've been speaking to a number of these traders, investors, and I feel we'd be sort of doing a great deal of injustice by dumping them in this. And I think one of the biggest developments over 35 years I can see is that people are now taking up investment as a full-time career, which means career investors. So you're not an engineer you got a basic degree, you may have a master's as well, but you're not wanting to join the L&Ts of the world or the Asian Paints or the consumer companies, but you want to just be there in multiple industries. And as some of them said, we could not start off a petrochemical company, so we invested in Reliance. We could not have started an XYZ company, so we invested in, Colgate-Palmolive, for instance. And effectively what is happening is these investors are seeing themselves as zero entry, zero exit parameters, and the ability to invest in a multiple set of industries, multiple set of situations. And I think that is really the career investor. And I think one of the things that the pandemic has done is allowed people, or effectively, imposed on them a certain need to learn and do other things. And out of necessity, comes an invention. And the invention in this case has been the formalizing of this career investor. The number of people who over a period of time, not just the lucre of the markets that's attracting them. So from the time when I joined, where I was told that, this is Satta Bazaar and you should stay away, and there was a negativity of a serious nature associated to the investment banks of the world coming up and becoming jobs that people lusted for, to now where career investors, where people are not necessarily looking at big names. So I think there is going to be a fantastic number of people who've already emerged on the scene, who are making money and who now are figuring out how to asset allocate. So they will reach out to the PMSs and the AIFs of the world. So maybe it's, we see unemployment, but we're not seeing this other side of things. So that's one big development. Other than, of course, the one big change over a period of time has been, during my career over these 35 years, I've seen the growth of China and now the possible resurgence of manufacturing. I'm an engineer in terms of my basic degree. I haven't done one day's engineering work. Ashamed to say that, but that's true. But today, if there is a resurgence in India of the manufacturing engineering space, it's because of a number of conditions, not the least of them being that every single producer, every single market in the world wants something out of India, either as a second or a third source, maybe a primary source. Whirlpool has just announced global outsourcing from India. So I'm sort of mentioning multiple things. So over a 35-year period, I see this becoming a place that people want to be. I can see manufacturing resurgence. I think manufacturing really is today what I think the technology boom was in the early 90s. And it's a long time coming. Today, engineering companies, a lot of MNCs are chock-a-block with capacities. Demand is not a problem. Supply chain is. So now logistics, supply chain, those are being rebuilt because you don't want to be caught out again with migrant labor having left, etc. So people are making their adjustments there. So I think there's not the least of the reasons being that one has seen the cycle, and hopefully one is a little wiser than when we started, that I think we could be in for a bull run, which could be absolutely unbelievable. And I think what you're seeing right now is a market that's refusing to correct. And the other big thing, by the way, which I think I want to mention is, through this pandemic has been the recognition that a larger amount of money needs to be allocated to the emerging markets. And one part of that restructuring of the portfolio by some of the big guys has resulted in a nearly 125,000 crores coming through in the last 10 weeks in the Indian markets. It's $20 billion has walked in. And that essentially has meant that what was seen as 11,500, 12,000 as a peak on the Sensex is now at 14,000. So you're talking about a 15% re-rating only as a result of what I call a one-time shift of about $20 billion that's walked in.
So Jakes, first of all, I mean, season's greetings to you. Greetings on these beautiful milestones, 35 years, and of course, birthday greetings. So it's a great celebratory time. Great to have you on the show as well. And I've been listening carefully to you, and you've made some very important points. And I hope the gods are listening, because if indeed there is to be this mega manufacturing move in this country, we know, forget the markets, we know what that does to, just quality of life, incomes, and, the economy at large. So just to come back to the market here and now, I take your points on board on the positives that you see around. But does it not worry you that there's almost no bear left? I mean, there is no one talking about the risks anymore. Is that in itself not a bit of a risk?
I beg to disagree. There may be no bears left, but are people fully invested? Two completely different questions. And the answer to the second is more important than the first. You may be bearish, you may be bullish. If you're bullish, are you fully committed? I beg to disagree. I think if you see the open interest, for instance, which is the principal yardstick of where these big HNI investors operate in, most stocks are at 1/3 to half the levels of open interest in terms of number of shares compared to the January highs at 12,000. So the 12,000, 12,300 highs, for instance, if it had a large pharma company at 2.5 crore open interest, that pharma company today is at 1 crore. The largest bank in the nation, in the country, had a 12 crore open interest. Today, their open interest may be 6 crores or 7 crores. I think there is across the board, you take the big steel companies, you take the power companies, all of them are displaying, which means that delivery has been picked up and rehoused, as in portfolios have got, beefed up with many of these. And I believe the truest sense of this is, the speed of the fall when there is a correction. In 2 days, the HNIs are first, because most of the HNIs who come in now are those who are recent entrants. So the day they see a 100, 150, 200 point fall, which erases the last few days' gains, they are out of the door immediately, which means the fall, as seen recently, becomes a 600 point fall. And literally all incremental recent entrants are out. A week later, surprise, surprise, or no surprise, surprise, we are 200 points higher than the earlier high of 13,750. We hit 13,100. Literally in 2 weeks, we're back to 14,000. It indicates clearly the buying on dips is relentless by long-only funds that are allocating new money. And from a market perspective, you may say there are no bears. I think there is no joy on the street. People are not celebrating, which means people are not fully invested. Mutual funds are still having redemptions, which means that individual investors are bailing out, whether due to Corona, whether due to whatever reasons. Yeah. I think the average Indian, while participation has increased, but most people are sitting with cash on the sidelines, waiting for opportunities. And the bubble, which you get to see, is in the new issue market. The absurdity of these new issues, making biscuits and cookies and burgers, quoting at 100 PE and 150 PE. I mean, that tells you where the excess is. Okay. Whereas your own channel said 10 lakh crores was chasing a few thousand crores of an issue size, was being chased by a total subscription of 10 lakh crores.
Jakes, Yeah, but you know what? Primary market is a reflection of secondary market at the end of the day, right? I mean, you always have issuances like these come out when the market's feeling like this. And I take your point that this has been one of the more hated bull markets because not too many people have participated. It's, you can see the prices going up, but still that doesn't take away from the fact that we are now trading at perhaps all-time high divergence from the averages in terms of price to earnings. Now, are the earnings going to pick up? That's always been a bit of a mirage. But purely on a valuation basis and over a 3 or 5 year period, these things do even out, right? So in that sense, is there a risk? I take your point on participation, but on valuation, we have gone to perhaps extreme.
I disagree there on 2 points. One is, as far as the feeling of left out is concerned, the feeling of missing out, the FOMO feeling, as people say, is seen in the way this entire madness around new issue markets is coming through. The new issue market is meant to be a proxy where people are trying to put in money and make quick gains on it, as though it is a way of making up for what they have missed out in the secondary market. That's one. Number two, in terms of earnings, you talked about two big spaces, the PSU space and the banking space. The PSU banking space, I think, will be the biggest contributors to earnings in the next 2 years. I think some of the biggest gainers in terms of results, just see the kind of pronouncements that the government has made. Has there been a single OFS as far as a PSU company is concerned? The answer is no. There has been some intent shown in terms of a strategic sale, which they are going through the motions depending on the markets, etc. There is almost no sale. You talk to people in the ministry, they talk about low valuations. They talk about non-core disposal of property in order to expand the returns that shareholders should be getting. They talk about buybacks. They talk about dividends. So for the first time, PSU is speaking the language of the share market. And I believe that some of the results of some of the big steel companies in the PSU space, metal companies, will be eye-popping. And more importantly, with cash flow, you will see quarter-on-quarter reduction in debt in some of these companies which have debt. And those that are sitting on cash are talking about spinning. For instance, it's in public domain. NMDC has talked about spinning out its steel, 3 million ton steel into another company, virtually to replicate the market cap of NMDC itself. These are not steps taken ever seen in the past. So I think PSU companies, not the least of the reasons being that there's no other way that they could go but up, as you could argue, but actually they're making the right moves. And more importantly, even the capex cycle is going to be fueled by a lot of the PSU companies that have been low on debt and now are willing to take up the load. So if you're talking about a manufacturing revival, you're talking about capex revival, it's largely going to be reflected in the PSU companies, which will have earnings that will be dramatically different from what they were 2 years ago. Similar with the banking space. I know the RBI, the report came out in terms of the NPA cycle. I believe the top 2-3 banks do not face this challenge, to my mind. And I think the numbers there, compared to the losses that they had to bear when they had these large one-off NPAs, is going to be very, very different. And you're talking about tens of thousands of crores of reported profits and taxes paid in some of the top 2-3 PSU banks. And if that comes through, why should valuations remain? No, valuations apart, the increase in the EPS from an index perspective or otherwise will catch up. I think the PE multiples also need to be seen in the context of the three factors of low interest rates worldwide, zero to low interest rates, long periods of no increase in rates, and the third most important thing is a weak dollar. Put these conditions as the backdrop. Plus, you talk about a revival. People liken this to 2002-03. I mean, we could have comparisons as to what was different and what was not, but it's not very dissimilar. I think we could have a 5-7 year run of manufacturing, PLI-led, or all kinds of other government schemes, and the incrementalism that the central government has practiced, I think, has to be read as austerity. And while a lot of people felt they had not done adequately at the time, they were these fiscal stimuli were sort of being suggested all around the world. I think they've done a reasonably good job. They've got enough firepower still left, and if a lot more focus is given on the PSUs, I think you'll be able to achieve I think a fair amount of return for the government, along with whatever the markets are looking at. In any case, most PSU stocks are quoting at book value or below, and I think they've got a long way to go, especially if the cycle revives.
So, Jakes, to sum it up, we take your point. You're optimistic, obviously, on PSUs, and you explain the reason why with this whole manufacturing revival. But how else can one sort of position for it? For instance, look at what's happening to cement companies. Of course, India Cement, different matter. I don't know if it's a Mr. the money impact or what. But how should one look at it? Real estate, cement, how do you sort of prime your portfolio to play the manufacturing revival?
I think a lot of engineering services companies, whether MNCs or India, the MNC companies, I'm sure, will see the foreign parent increasing their holdings so that new technologies can be brought in. Most of them like to do this when they're 50% plus or even closer to 75. So there are a number of MNC engineering plays that are available. Even in the Indian plays, they're all modestly, many of them are quoting in the low single-digit PEs or in low teens at best. So you have to look for value. I personally believe that this thing about high PEs is probably the more obvious factor that's keeping people away. and saying, hey, this is a red flag for us to enter the markets. Again, I believe corrections will keep happening, but what happens after a correction is more important. Even between 2003 and 2007, there were two corrections of 25% and 35%, which happened in the interim over a 3-month and a 4-month period. I think in 2006 and 2000, I think 6 and 4 or 5 and 6, if I remember right, were vicious corrections. But you always rallied significantly higher. And I think the most important thing in a bull market is people need to be fearful, people need to be unhappy. Then you can be sure the longevity of the bull market is assured.
By the way, it's a new high on the Nifty, 13,984, and what a standard template the market has followed. Once again, a sharp intraday dip has been used to buy, and just look at the last few minutes of trade, and from the low of 13,880 thereabout, it's a 100-point rally intraday that the Nifty has given you. And even on the Bank Nifty now we are in the green, 31,350 is what we have at this point in time. So things looking good over there. So now, Jakes, till about 3 months back, it looked like the only play in the market was IT and pharma. And pharma in particular, it looked like was coming out of a long bear market. So is that trade out the way now, or do you think that can also go up along with the other plays that you mentioned?
See, those have secular tailwinds. I think the adoption of IT, people have talked and waxed eloquent about, has been, like never before. So I think the IT, procurement of large contracts, moving to different geographies, that will continue. So IT has its own sort of tailwinds. The pharma companies have shown that they have adapted and adopted to what is required in a changing world during the pandemic times and beyond. So while the vaccine itself may come through, I still believe that it's not a vaccine trade, but the pharma space will still be in demand over the next couple of years, and especially the Indian generic players. So I think while that trade may not give you multi-bagger returns, my sense is the multi-bagger returns may well come from elsewhere, but they will be good supports in a nifty kind of situation, where if you're looking at the index, and I remember I was on your channel, I think maybe just about a month and a half ago, and we were just crossed 13,000. And we talked about whether a 10 to 15%, which is a move to 14,250 to 15,000 over a 1-year period is possible. We're almost there. And it's not because necessarily the market's been dramatically bought into, but those with stocks are backing away and newer sectors are coming in to take the load. I think, you've talked about solar and wind and hydro. And I think the existing thermal guys, as they keep readjusting their portfolio to these, to green energies in a sense, there could be a big play there. Adani Green I've never understood, so I'm not able to comment on that. But there are other players, smaller, and some large companies, including companies in the Tata stable, which are in the solar and other space, which I think can surprise you on the upside.
Okay, Jakes, it was wonderful talking to you, and this is of course our last conversation for the year and for the decade. Thanks a lot for joining us, and of course, once again wishing you a very happy 60th birthday in advance. 35 years in the market, of which I've known you for exactly half of that. Jakes, my biggest memory, of course, is 2004. It was when you used to talk to me a lot and used to teach me some derivative strategies and some basics of futures and options. That something that I still remember. Thanks, Jakes. Always good talking to you.
Wishing you and the viewers all the very, very best for the new year. Thank you.
Okay, that's N. Jayakumar of Prime Securities. We will take a break. We'll come back with some insight into dealing rooms in our segment, The Street Chatter.
And of course, some trading calls coming up for the last half hour of the day.